Speaking of different colored box of crowns, we are going to be talking about a very distinct and different box of crowns here with Generation Z. All right, a little bit about me. Eric Kirby, grew up in the Salt Lake area, went to Taylorsville High School. If there are fellow Warriors in the house, did my undergraduate work down at SUU, and then moved out to Denver, got my master's degree in administration, got my law degree, ended up practicing law for about 10 years. I was a trial attorney. Wasn't seeing the wife and kiddos much, so decided to make a career shift. So I got my PhD in global leadership and jumped into higher ed. So I've been at SUU now for 12 years. For the past 9 of those years, I was in charge of overseeing retention for the university. And due to that, we started recognizing we were getting very unique students coming into SUU that were unlike any of the generations that higher ed was really built to accommodate. And this generation is called Generation Z. So I've kind of made it my life's work in a sort of way to really dive into Gen Z and understand them. Because while there are generational gaps that occur between all the generations, we haven't seen a gap this big in quite some time. And so I think the more we can learn about Generation Z, the better off we can be as educators, as instructors, more importantly as moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you name it. This is a generation that will be coming through for quite some time, and they will be followed up by Gen Alpha. I have one slide on Gen Alpha, but we'll be diving really primarily into Generation Z. The goal today is to just kind of go through some of the data, some of the back stuff, and then I hope to have some minutes at the end where we can open up to Q&A and just anything else you want to dive into or any questions you have about this generation and the nuances. So a couple of thoughts. I'm going to be dumping a lot of data on you. I apologize, but it really helps explain what and who this generation is. But again, look at it through what is this trying to tell me? What can I learn from it? Try to find a few things that you could maybe look at to improve, do differently to help Generation Z. Try to suspend judgment on this generation, and you'll see why. I think this generation has a very bad rap in our culture as being lazy, being entitled, not as entitled as the millennials often get blamed for, but being snowflakes, being too soft, not having spines, things like that. I'm going to be painting with a very broad brush with this data. It's not necessarily unique to Utah or anything like that. This is national data that we're looking at, but I've generally found that the data does apply to the vast majority of Gen Zs here in Utah. Also understand that generational nuances can be very tricky, and here's what I mean by that. Generation Z does not know they're unique. They just know they're them. And all their friends are just like them, and they think every generation has gone through exactly what they're going through, and so they don't know that they're unique, which it becomes part of our role to maybe help them with that uniqueness and better accommodate and be responsive to them. There's going to be really 3 categories with a lot of the data I'm throwing out, depending on your roles and your responsibilities. There will be some things that you can pick up and be like, oh, that's easy to shift in the way I teach, in the way I greet, or whatever it is. There will be some mid-level stuff that you might want to put on the back burner and say, okay, maybe down the road I want to implement this or start with this. And then there will be, quite honestly, some stuff that you wish you could do, but we may not have the resources or the funds or the time to actually do with this generation. All right, I always start with this principle. I now teach, after I left that role as Assistant Vice President over retention at SUU, I've joined the faculty at SUU. I teach in the master's program down there, Business Administration. I teach management and leadership courses as well as business law in the undergrad. And I found this to be very true, that in order to teach, I must know you. It is really tough to teach if you do not know who you're trying to teach. And so with Generation Z, if we are going to educate and teach them, we must first know them. And I love this because it resonates with a lot of individuals in my generation, at least, that if a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. We need to understand as educators that it can't just always be my way or the highway, especially with Generation Z, that we may have to adapt curriculum, styles, behaviors to help this generation better succeed. Who is this generation? As we talk about Gen Z, we're really referring to 11 to 27 years old. Generations are very fluid because they're actually not closed or confined until sometimes decades after the generation has passed. So we're generally looking at Generation Z right now. They started graduating high school in roughly 2019. Are you all teaching K through 12, or what's the age ranges here? You got K through 12, right?
Yeah.
Preschool to 22.
Okay, cool. So your 11 to 22-year-olds are going to be your Gen Zers. Your 10 down to still yet to be born are going to be your Gen Alphas. Okay, so I've got 6 kids of my own. My oldest 4 are Gen Zers, and my two youngest are Gen Alphas.
Who comes up with these like Gen Z, Gen Alpha? How does that? Or are you going to get to that?
No, I won't get to it, but I'll answer it, yeah. So generations are really defined by researchers who are set on putting the bounds on that generation. So they will generally try to find unique things with that generation to help define them. So boomers, for example, baby boomers was after the Second World War when everyone came home and everyone started procreating and multiplying and replenishing the earth. And babies just came. So that generation, anyone who was born there is known as baby boomers. Then they lacked creativity and they said, well, what are we going to do? So let's just start with the end of the alphabet. Let's go with Gen X, knowing we'll probably have 2 more generations before the millennium. So let's get Gen Y in there that are often called millennials. And then, hey, what the heck, let's call Gen Z because it will be the last one as we transfer over into the 2000s. So that's why they generally start in 1997-ish. Gen Alpha, because of lack of creativity, let's just start over with the alphabet again. A. There, so it wouldn't surprise me if the next one is B. I'll give you a heads up, there is some serious talk happening that Gen Alpha will be renamed as Generation C for COVID, climate, capitalism, and there's 2 other buzzwords thinking that those acts will define this generation, Gen Alpha. But for now, we're sticking with Gen Alpha. Again, it will change with time. But. All right, in order to truly understand Generation Z, we have to understand how they came to age. And I would venture to bet Generation Z has had a harder coming of age, than probably any other generation out there. And here's why. They came to age in a time of increasing polarization and fragmentation in our nation. They were 2 years old when Columbine happened. They were in kindergarten when 9/11 happened. Terrorism and war for this generation hasn't been like the Cold War where it's just been a thought. This has been in their own backyard and in the palm of their hand from the time they could turn on the internet. The fear is embedded into their psyche. They have a psychological fear of a lot of things. They're products of the Great Recession, which we haven't had anything like that since the Great Depression. They were 8, 9, 10, 11 years old when moms and dads were losing homes. Aunts and uncles were losing jobs. I apologize.
Get right in.
You're good.
They've seen people lose jobs, livelihoods. Yet on top of that, the fragmentation and polarization of school shootings, Occupy movements, protests over police brutality, and the legalization of 1,001 things, all while they're trying to develop their own identity and self. Well, you think that's enough for this generation, then you add on what COVID has done to them, and you wonder why this generation is who they are. The research, we still don't know what COVID has done to this generation, on top of everything else that's happened. This is the most diverse generation we'll ever see. Only half of this generation is white. A quarter of this generation is Hispanic. They do not understand why everyone's having issues with diversity. They don't get it. It's their life, it's their reality, it's their friends, it's their schoolmates. They do not understand why there's issues with LGBTQ. They don't understand why there's issues with race. They don't get it. They're poised to become the most entrepreneurial generation. 42% of this generation expects to work for themselves. Why? Because they're products of the Great Recession. They are super conscientious of money and finances. They believe, right or wrong, that if you work for yourself and you're your own boss, you can't get fired. Okay? So they don't want to go through what their parents and aunts and uncles went through in the Great Recession. So they're looking to carve out their own path and create their own job. They view themselves as individuals, not believing in living social norms. They seek to be treated like adults. This generation has had to grow up faster than any other generation. And what do I mean by that? You look at my generation, I don't know if it was probably around college that I had to really deal with issues of abortion or same-sex attraction or marriage or death penalty or some of these bigger adult issues. And I was more mature, 18, 19, and could probably start processing this. At what age is this generation finding out about police brutality and violence and killings? 2, 3, 4, 5? At what age are they finding about genocides and massacres and things like that? At what age are they, the palm of their hand, are they having these national discussions on abortion and things like that? They've had to handle adult conversations and topics from the time they're in kindergarten. And we haven't shielded them from it. And consequently, in many of their own rights, they've had to grow into adulthood at a young age. And therefore, in some ways, they're probably more mature and can handle heavier stuff than we were at that age. Consequently, they actually expect to be treated like adults because they've come to adulthood a lot sooner. Now, we may view them as they're still immature and things like that, and they're not emotionally and mentally there. You're probably right, but that doesn't change the way they expect to be treated because of how they've been raised. Consequently, transparency is key. If you want to build trust with this generation, you need to be transparent. Don't shield them from information. Here's why. If you look at everything that they've been raised in, let's just take COVID for example. You woke up every morning wondering if you're going to die. You wonder if you're going to be able to go to school. You wonder if you're ever going to be able to play with friends again. You wonder if dad and mom or grandpa who just got pneumonia, whether they're going to live. You woke up every morning with the uncertainty of the future. They're tired of information being hidden from them. Uncertainty means insecurity. Lack of transparency equates to fear for this generation. If it's bad news, give it to them. They would rather deal with that than the whole concept of they don't need to, tell if they don't need to know or stuff like that. I think we've got to, again, treat them like adults, but be transparent in your objectives, be transparent in what you're trying to do and accomplish, be transparent in your motives, and it's a great way to build bonds with this generation. They have shorter attention spans than millennials. I think they're still slightly above goldfish, but generally they're about 8 seconds. This generation, which is 4 seconds lower than millennials. They seek instant results, and that's a product of their environment. That blue circle of death that occurs on the internet or on Netflix is too much for them. They expect with Spotify and Amazon Prime and everything like that to get instant results. So when they ask you a question or send you an email, they expect an instant response. So with my Gen Zers, I respond saying, I've got your email, give me 3 days to get the answer back to you, and they're okay with that. But they still expect that instant response.
Voices, yeah.
So why don't they give that in return? Like when I text my kids, they're like, I'm not gonna answer dad's it.
Because they expect it of authority, they don't expect it of peers. They see living with others as an intrusion. And we're seeing this at issues in LDS missions or military or in colleges. Primarily because my generation, I had to live with 3 brothers in the same room. This generation generally has their own space. And they keep 6 feet. And then you add on top of that the 6 feet difference, and everyone has cooties, that everything is a social intrusion on them and the way they view things. This is a generation that you have to go to them. Do not beg them to come to you. They will not come to you. If you're waiting for them to come to your office, if you're waiting for them to reach out, you're probably going to be waiting in vain with this generation. Find intrusive ways to interfere with their lives. Be the first one to send out a check-in email. Hey, just want to check in with you. How's your week been going? Go to them, don't beg them to come to you. If you have office hours or things like that, I've started holding my office hours in public spaces. I'll go into the Center for Diversity and Inclusion to have my office hour. I go to them. I'm not gonna make them come to my office. So find ways to go to them. This is a generation that's hyper-focused on the future. The more you can tie in what you're trying to do and accomplish into their future, the more responsive they're going to be. So the more we can tie in decisions, curriculum, programs, events, extracurricular, the more we can tie that into their future, the more likely they will to be responsive. If they cannot see the connection to their future or how it's going to benefit their career, their job, or what they're trying to do, it's going to greatly diminish their likelihood of being willing to try it or accomplish it. Their decisions aren't always based on fact or logic. The reason for that is this is a very emotional generation. When you grow up in the diversity that they have a very soft spot and compassion for everyone around them. Consequently, don't try to figure out a lot of their decisions. It's not logical, it's not factual. It's going to be emotional. They are the generation that is consistently seeking flexibility because they expect to be treated as individuals. They do not believe in fitting into social norms. And so they expect that flexibility, just as they can watch anything they want whenever they want, or listen to whatever they want whenever they want. They expect us to be very flexible with them in the way we deliver our education, the way we respond, the way we do certain things.
Bless their hearts.
Yep. This is a generation that expects to be communicated with across multiple platforms and in snackable content. They're used to the 160 characters that are Twitter. Anything more than 160 characters becomes too much. So what I've learned with my students, there's sometimes I have to send them a lengthy email. There's just no way around it. So I send the email, and then I immediately send them out a text saying, I just sent you a very important email that you could get kicked out of school for. You're going to want to read it. And the read rate goes up 100% because I provide a snackable content to get them to do what I need them to do. They've never known a non-digital world. This is the first generation that has grown up 100% with the internet. They cannot fathom what it was like to live without the internet, the iPhone. They can't get their minds around that. They've just assumed we've always been able to ask Siri a direction and go find it. My kids are baffled that we used to have to read street coordinates and travel, or actually pull out a map and be like, well, I think we take this road. They think we're kind of pirates, treasure hunters with the maps.
It was interesting. I was with my brother that's just older than me, and then my mom and dad, and my mom had made the comment, I just can't believe some kids these days, they don't even know how to write with a pen, or they don't even know how to write cursive. And my brother made a very interesting comment that goes with this, and he's like,
Why?
They've never had the opportunity or reason to ever pick up a pen and learn how to do it. We've always just used their fingers and tap this and sign here and pay for this like this by signing your life away. And it was a very interesting, I was grateful for his answer.
You used not to be able to use your debit card at McDonald's. They were like, no, cash only.
And so he said it probably won't ever get that way. Like they're never, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like let go of it.
And then this is part of it is you've got to figure out how hard you want to push on certain things, not only in parenthood, but just in life with this generation, because again, if they do not see the relevance to it, to their careers or where they're going, they're not just going to learn cursive just to learn cursive. That's irrelevant to them. That's archaic. If for some reason a career they're going into or their future demands it, then all of a sudden you're going to see that interest go up. But just, hey, you got to learn cursive because I had to. Yeah, that ain't going to work.
It's funny, I was actually talking to my son. He's older. He's outside of this Gen Z, I think. Anyway, but we were talking just last night about like taxes and paychecks and politics and stuff like that, and he's like, gosh, why didn't they teach me this in high school? And I'm like, they tried, but it didn't have anything to do with you at the time. So and you didn't care because you're like, why am I ever going to need this information? But now that he's got a job and he's getting paychecks and taxes are coming out and all this stuff, he's like, what? So now he's
They take a third of my income?
Yeah, right.
Like, now all of a sudden they care.
Yeah, so it's just.
Yeah. They spend a lot of time on social media. Over half of them will spend on average 4 hours a day on social media. This is a very self-directed, self-educated generation. They love themselves some YouTube. YouTube is their primary source for education. When I tell my kids to go put together the basketball standard that we just bought, they quickly pull up YouTube, they watch a 3-minute video, and they go out and they do it. It's amazing how they won't come to me, they just go to YouTube. YouTube is the holy Bible for them as far as how to get things done. Through the internet and social media is how they speak their mind. And so I say this because if you're looking for ways to get feedback, try anonymous sources through social media and electronic means. This is a generation that will not walk into your office and tell you where you're coming short. I've had to put some students on probation from Gen Z in my previous role. I'd have conversations with them. Is everything clear? Do you understand what's going on? Yeah. They'd leave and I'd start my stopwatch because within 5 minutes I'd get a text. Hey, so what do you mean I'm on probation? Like, can I not go to class? And I'm like, so, okay, cool. We'll engage in text because we can't do this face to face.
They won't pick up a phone, they won't have that conversation. If I can't tell it to you in 10 words or less, even, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm texting you upstairs. You need to clean the bathroom. You know?
Yeah. And with students, one of the things I found is this generation, again, they won't pick up the phone if they don't recognize who it's coming from. So when I have to call on school business, I'll always text them right before saying, hey, Eric Kirby here, I'm about to call you, we need to talk about. And I usually get about an 80% pickup rate when I just tip them off that I'm about to call and it's an unknown number. But I have to do the same. I text my kids, come up and do your chores and come.
Yep.
All right, parents are huge with this generation. Parents are numero uno for this generation. 88% are extremely close to them. And I can see, when I read this, I'm like, yeah, could have fooled me with my kids. You may not feel it, but this generation actually really reveres and admires parents. Their parents are huge influencers. More than 50% will consult with parents on important matters. And I say this because in higher ed and in education, we have found that the more we can educate parents, the more it helps the students. Because the students will turn to the parents first when they're having issues if YouTube can't answer the question for them about what should I do, should I go to this school, should I go to that school, should I take this job, should I not? And so the more we can educate parents, the better off we're having success. We actually created at SU in light of Generation Z a parent coordinator. Her only role on our campus, it's not students who are parents, it's actually the parents of our students. We know, for example, that week 2 of the semester, students get really homesick. So week 1, she sends them a newsletter on homesickness. It says, parents, your kids have a 75% chance of being homesick come week 2. Here's some coping mechanisms, here's some things to look out for. But when they call home, don't have them come home. Here's 15 events that are happening on campus, make sure they go to it. And sure enough, these kids call, Mom, I want to come home this weekend. Nope, you're staying there. Well, I don't like it here. You're a little homesick, and that's okay. It's very normal. P.S. You need to go to the dance on Saturday. How did you know about the dance? So the more you can educate parents, bring them along, you may find greater success with this generation.
And SUU does a really good job with that. I had a kid, well, he's not transferred to Utah State, but he was at SUU for 4 years. But like that freshman year, like, go to the nest, Joseph. Yep. Everybody's just gonna meet up at the nest and then go from there. And it really was. You would get your little email. This is what's going on.
Yeah, we completely. That was my task, was to completely revamp the first year experience for our students and get them Gen Z ready. Cell phones dominate every aspect of their life. 98% of Gen Zs have smartphones and they will check it 80 times a day. They've been able to access instantly the world. COVID has completely shifted the way they view technology and education due to the unprecedented exposure that they've had with technology. We're seeing big shifts in the way they expect to be educated that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Again, they're laser focused on securing a better future for themselves, and that's just as a result of the Great Recession, the pandemics, climate change, mass shootings, protests over police brutality, and other difficulties. They expect to work for themselves. Look at that, it's 11% nationally. 11% of the nation expect to be entrepreneurs. This generation, 42% expect to work for themselves. Here's the two buzzwords that you need to remember with this generation. They view life and everything they're doing in terms of value and relevance. If they cannot make it make sense value financially, they're not going to do it. And if it's not relevant to them and their future, they're not going to do it. The more we can help it make value, financial sense, and relevant to them, the greater chance we have. So consequently, let's just take higher ed, for example. Are they finding, some are not, the value and relevance in a 4-year degree, right? So a lot of this generation's like, I just don't get it. I'm not seeing what the value and relevance is. Consequently, higher ed is really struggling with trying to redefine how to find value and relevance with this generation.
I think even adding to that, they're looking at the cost. Like, why am I going to go and invest
And that's that value
this
part.
much into it, and I'm gonna have to pay interest on it, and it's gonna double?
Yep.
Like, it doesn't make
You're seeing
sense.
your parents who are still paying student loans, and still
Correct.
paying off grad school.
This
Why
is
would I do that to them?
This is one of the most pragmatic generations, and they have seen their moms and dads grapple under the burden of financial debt, and they do not want that in their lives. They've seen parents have to postpone childbirth, home purchase, boat purchase, ATV purchase for the sake of school debt, and they do not understand how higher ed is really going to help them get to their finish line, especially when 42% expect to work for themselves.
Okay, so I have a question about that,
Yeah.
because I know, and I'm gonna say the buzzword that you're gonna like wanna throw your remote at me, but a lot of them do seem lazy. Like, they do not, their laundry's on the floor next to the hamper. It's like, it's honestly one little, like, lift it and dump it. It's not that
At
difficult.
what point do they have to take ownership of it? We're coming to that.
Well, to be fair, I had a hard time getting my clothes in the laundry.
I know, my husband does as well.
Right?
I
I
think
mean,
it's genetic, but
so-
it's fine.
Yeah,
We're
Ow!
dealing with it.
Ow, Allison.
I think there's a lot of things
He has
that
6
just,
brothers.
it's more just being a youth
Yeah.
than it is. But to your bigger point, which I agree with.
Can I ask my question
Yes,
though?
yeah.
The 42% that expect to work for themselves, like, we owned a restaurant growing up. We worked our butts off. I detasseled corn, like, as a 12-year-old. So I had to work hard my whole entire life. So this 42% that expect to work for themselves, do they understand the grit that has to happen for you to own your
No.
own business?
No,
Like,
they have
do you know what I'm
no
saying?
idea.
So, or is it just that expectation of like, I'm gonna be a rich business owner and I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna be a
rent out my
YouTuber.
cars? They don't know how much money it's gonna cost to buy the cars, but
Yeah, so,
is it just an idea, or do they actually have some common sense behind what that
No.
means?
so let's unpack
Sorry,
several things.
I
in there.
know
No,
that-
that's great.
But I'm just curious.
So first off, we gotta remember most of them are 11 to 18-year-olds right now.
Yeah,
So common sense is out the window,
yeah.
okay? So the second thing is, yeah, I heard some people say social media influencers and things like that. Yes, social media influencing is the NFL quarterback from my day.
Yeah.
Everyone in my generation thought we were gonna be NFL quarterbacks. That was our pipe dream, right? And I'm sure my parents are like, you're the most unathletic person in the world. Hey, keep it up, buddy, you're gonna do great. So this generation, they don't wanna be NFL quarterbacks or Michael Jordans or anything like that. They wanna be social media influencers because it's a quick fix. Do they have an actual reality of what it's gonna mean no. Just as I, as an 11, 16-year-old, had no clue what it meant to actually be an NFL quarterback or the grind I would have to put in. So it then raises the question with this generation, and I didn't put these on the slide because I've gotten mixed results with everything, but I think I'm in a safe environment with these slides. People are there's been a tradition to blame education for the shortcomings of this generation. Finally, researchers are coming out and saying, if you want to point the finger at anyone, you got to point the finger at parents. If this generation is not up to par, or is not meeting the standards, or doesn't have the grit, or doesn't have whatever it is we feel they need to have, parents need to look in the mirror and say, what have I done to teach that to them?
Where's that TED Talk to share on Instagram?
No joke.
So I was actually doing a 2-hour workshop on how to hire, retain, and I brought this up with employers about, they were just bashing the system of education. I'm like, are you really thinking that our public school systems are responsible for correcting this stuff? What avenue do you feel parents have, if any, for the responsibility of raising their kids and making them productive adults? So I'm telling you right now, that is a discussion that's out there. I think parents need to own a lot more of this. And if we want our kids to be socially apt, we've got to teach them how to shake hands and how to look people in the eyes and have conversations. If we want them to develop work ethic, we've got to find jobs and do, we can't rely on education. So I know it kind of indirectly answers some of your points, but they don't understand what it's going to take to get them there. They need people who help them. We need to remember this generation that their mindset is not a willful choice. It's just the way they've been raised. And what I mean by that is they haven't willfully said, I'm going to decide not to communicate. It's just they've been raised to not communicate. And they haven't been taught an alternative, and more importantly, had that alternative explained why that is important to where they want to go. And so what I found with this generation, I've hired and supervised probably over 400 Gen Zers. And I will spend the first 10 weeks going over social development with Gen Z, where I'll actually teach them how to shake hands. Hey, you come in and you do not squeeze until you hit web to web. And then at that point, you clinch. And then it's 2 pumps from the elbow. And you make eye contact with them as you're doing that. And you offer a salutation. It's nice to meet you. These are grown adults, college students. I'm teaching how to shake hands. I give them a list of 100 questions, icebreaker questions. They sit down for an hour. We rotate every 10 minutes, where all they do is small talk in person. And the feedback on that is awful. They hate it. 4 years later, they come back and say, thanks for taking the time with me. That has done more to help me get a job and further my career than anything else. I've never had a student say they don't want to learn. They've just never been presented options. I don't know how many parents are actually sitting down teaching these kids how to survive in the world, in the professional world. And a lot of kids don't have parents that are willing to do that. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying I put that on you, but to the extent that you can start teaching some of these nuggets, I would encourage you to do that. The first 5 minutes of every single one of my classes is professional development. Today we're going to talk about why belts need to match shoes, socks need to match pants. And if you're wearing a belt, you don't wear suspenders. What? And so we spend 5 minutes talking about professional dress. I've had students come and, hey, Kirby, I'm about to go interview. How do I look? And they've got holes in their pants. And I said, that's completely unprofessional. How do you think you look? I think I look very professional. Talk to me about why you think you look professional. Well, because I tucked in my shirt.
Legit.
That's it for them.
No, they really think that.
So awesome opportunity if you say, hey, can we talk? Well, I don't have a suit. Cool. I've got one you can borrow. Go knock it out of the park. He gets his job. They're not rebelling against this. They've just never been taught the alternatives. So it requires some patience. Yes, it requires extra work, but more importantly, it requires people who actually care about their future and well-being. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I won't keep bashing parents.
Can I say, my 7-year-old, so I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And my 7-year-old, both my kids, I'm pretty sure have ADD. I think we all do in our family. So, but my 12-year-old has struggled with some of that stuff, and I have him go over to our neighbor who's older. They're an older couple, and they've kind of adopted him as grandparents. And whenever they're outside, they'll go and small talk with them. And it's been really valuable because then he feels a lot more confident with people he doesn't feel as comfortable with. But my 7-year-old attends this class called Kid Strong. Anyone that's looking for something like that. And every day at the start of the session, it's an obstacle course to talk about, like, I am strong, I am brave, I can do this. And they also teach them at the start of the session, they make them all shake their hand and introduce themselves. They make them make eye contact, and they just talk through the importance of that. And he's a 7-year-old, and he's like,
he's going to be light years ahead of this generation.
So well with it. But for our parents that are kind of struggling with that, it's been a great thing for our family just to allow him to feel comfortable in his own skin.
Yep.
Because he's a very anxious kid. He's very nervous that he's going to be too much for some people. And so it's been a really positive, and there's things out there like that. I think that could help older kids too. But
there's just so many, thanks for sharing that. There's so many nuggets that we can do just around conversations, picnics, dinner tables, things like that. I mean, I'll bring over college students and make all my kids just sit down with them. I mean, you got 30 minutes to entertain them. Go. They hate me for it, but they'll thank me one day. So, yeah.
So going back to the 42% and the lazy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not doing their laundry or whatever. So I've got 2 kids in this generation.
Huh?
And what I have noticed is exactly what you said about the value and relevance. Not gonna do his laundry, but when he realizes the things that do have that value and that relevance, if he wants to work for himself, he wants to learn Japanese. So he got online, he ordered a Japanese textbook, he's out there, he's got all of this stuff. They work hard for the things that they think have value and relevance, but the clothes are still on the floor.
Yeah.
So we're like, my generation, maybe I feel like, anyway, we kind of like have everything done, you know, all the little X's and O's.
The check
and
boxes, make
crossed,
sure we're,
yes.
yep.
They have more things that are maybe just hanging out there, but will work hard for the things that they do see that have that value.
Yeah, and so for example, with the clothes, I mean, I get on my kids all the time. They leave wet towels on the floor. I left wet towels on the floor. They can't take that one extra effort to get their underwear and the dirty clothes. But on the flip side, when we don't fold our kids' clothes, we just have them come and they have to do their own wash. Even our kindergarten's doing her own wash. They have to then get their clothes. They then take them down to their room, and then it sits in a pile. Okay, so the clean clothes sit in a pile. And so my kids are a giant petri dish of social experiments for me. So I pulled my oldest aside and said, talk to me about this. Walk me through the logic. And they're like, Dad, this makes 0 sense for me to take the energy and effort to fold this, to put it in a drawer, to then take it out the next day to wear it. Why am I going to waste time and effort in that when I can see what's there? I know exactly what I can wear. These are my clean clothes. I disagree. I don't know why I disagree because it bothers me. But from that value relevance proposition of what this, it makes complete sense. It's a waste of effort and time. And they feel like they're just doing it just to do it. They can't connect it to how is that going to make me a better person or better dressed. I've had the conversations if your wife's going to appreciate it and they're not there yet. So they're just like, yeah, girls still have cooties, not interested. So, all right.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
So, we had something similar in our board a couple years ago, but we grew up, maybe Gen X, and before us, like to become an adult, it was a checklist. I graduated high school, I went to college, I went on my mission, I got married, I had a baby, and all those things. And that is no longer, that it is not, they don't need a piece of paper to say that I'm an adult. And those things don't make me an adult. And I remember we went home that day, you know, and I asked my 17-year-old, what's gonna make you an adult? And he goes, when I'm completely independent and I don't have to ask you for anything. You know, and it was just very different because mine was, oh, the checklist. And the checklist of our day is dead. They don't believe in a checklist.
You're absolutely right as far as the checklist. More importantly, they don't believe in the milestones that traditionally brought about a significant part. Driver's license, for example. We're seeing a huge decline in a willingness to get driver's license among 16-year-olds. Here's why. They don't see the value relevance because they don't want to pay gas. That's number one. Second, they don't want to pay insurance. Third, they don't want to pay for a car. Number four, our generation viewed getting that driver's license as an escape from the home. Freedom.
Yes.
Guess where they get to escape every day from home?
Right there.
Right there. They get to come home, hey buddy, how you doing? You want a game together? They don't need to drive. In their minds, there is no extra freedom or advantage to getting a driver's license and driving. We've got a 15-year-old we're trying to get out on permits, and he's just like, I don't really care if I get a license or not. He's like,
I do.
I need
and I'm like, I need you to shuttle around the other kids, so
you have 6
you're
kids,
getting one.
you are like, you're getting there.
Oh, my oldest can drive, and he is permanent taxi, and he's like, can I give my driver's license back? And I'm like, nope, no can do.
So I wet my kid's whistle, and at like 12, they're driving in the parking lot. So.
Yeah, my kid, we're Cedar City, we got all kinds of dirt roads.
Yeah.
My kids at a young age, they think it's fun, just, they love it.
But I think just like going back, there's Uber, there's Lyft.
Yeah,
So why
that's
do
the
I
other
have
big
to
thing.
drive?
There's
Or if I
zero,
want food, I can order DoorDash.
Right.
the value and relevance is out the door. And that continues
A
on.
milestone thing though.
And we're seeing it with marriage as well. There's larger studies going on. Their value and relevance of marriage as a proposition is out the door. They don't really get it.
Eat and drink before you marry. Marriage is like, yeah.
All right, so they're rethinking the value of traditional four-year education. They're looking more towards short-term credentials. We saw a 70% increase in short-term credentials from this generation. Freshman enrollments dropping by 16%. Only 25% now believe that traditional model is the only pathway to get a good job. Number one concern when they think about education is costs, followed by will it land me a solid job, followed by will it give me the skills I need. Again, hyper-focused on finances. They're very concerned about unemployment. If given $500 on this survey, they would save it for nothing in particular. Second thing they would do is save it for college, and then maybe this is a very financially savvy group. They're not out there just spending money on willy-nilly.
And those are old statistics, so it's probably even worse now.
Yeah, COVID has heightened
Yeah,
that.
2013.
But they seem to go on travel more than any generation, I think.
Again, the value relevance is there for them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just wondering who's buying all these expensive houses. I thought it was this generation.
Amen.
It's just generation. Congratulations, right? Because a lot of this Gen Zers, they're buying into 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, but it's the millennials, and Gen Xers that caused the Great Recession and probably going to get us into another bubble. Gen Zers are not buying these homes.
Tiny homes.
Or their parents are helping them buy it, because we have young couples buying these crazy houses on my street, and I'm like, wow, what?
Grandma,
Oh,
daddy,
coming from
left
them.
them an inheritance.
My son is 20, almost 27, he's at the very top, the very, yeah. And he is, he self-names himself a dirtbagger. He lives in his Sequoia,
Huh?
like 9 months out of the year, worth of days. He loves it, he's minimalist, he relies on no one, he goes anywhere he wants, happy as a lark. And we're like, you wanna get married to someone who does their nails? What? How does this add up? And
She'll live with her dad.
it's just funny.
Yep.
Doesn't want to own a house.
1 in 4 is describing their feelings of finance as always stressed. Paying back debt is their top worry. As far as leadership preference, here's their 2 leadership styles that they love. As far as clubs, as far as leadership from teachers, whatnot. Number 1 is a democratic leadership style, where everyone has a say and they can hear it. Second one is this affiliative, which is a kind of a leadership approach that you cater to the individual. You're willing to adapt your style to what they want. Notice that commanding, which is what I was raised on with my dad and grandpa,
Yeah.
and the coaching are down towards the bottom of their list. They want everyone to be a part, and they want people to cater to them individually and be willing to help them grow individually. Mental health is huge for this generation, as you can rightfully see given their upbringing. The 70% see anxiety, depression as major problems. They are 27% more likely to report their mental health is poor, and only 45% of this generation feels their mental health is good. Not just great, good.
Ooh, leave that up for now.
91% have experienced physical, emotional symptoms due to stress mental in this past year, and that's from the 2021 study. This is increasing. Given from the time they were in kindergarten all the way up through COVID, it's no surprise their mental health is in shambles. Yep.
So on that last slide where you talked about what they prefer in their learning or
Yep.
engagement with adults, whatever, how do you work around, because I'm dealing with this right now with our 12-year-olds. There's a math teacher that she's just a snob, and my husband sent a few emails, and then it's, well, whatever's going to make you happy. Like, that was basically the parent-teacher conference we had last night. And so we've tried to tell my son, like, even though you know there's this tension, you still need to respect her, and you still need to listen to her because she's a teacher.
Absolutely.
And there's been this resistance of him getting feisty back with her because he's like, no, she's going to get feisty with my parents, I'm going to get feisty with her. How do you still instill that with a situation where a teacher's not going to be collaborative and they're not going to support his individualization and whatever?
Yeah,
How do you help them understand that?
I think you're taking the right approach. One, as parents, and again, they view parents as their number 1 role model. So if they see parents getting snipey or disagreeing or bad-mouthing the teacher, that gives them full permission to do the same.
Yeah.
Second is model the behavior that you want, and it sounds like you are. Third, make sure you help explain the value and relevance of learning how to work with people that you may disagree with. And help them understand how it's going to get them further ahead, that if they want to be entrepreneurial, they're going to have clients that are going to see differently. They've got to learn how to manage that and fit into that mold. Fourth, sometimes they just got to suck it up. And that needs to come from a parent as far as you got to do it. So.
That's basically what we
Yep,
said.
sounds perfect, yep.
Okay.
Okay. Stressors, number 1 stressor for this generation, school shootings. Okay, why? Well, it's what's in the palm of their hand. But if you look back to my generation, our number one concern was earthquakes.
Stop, drop, roll.
Okay, stop, drop, roll. I was either going to catch on fire, I was going to fall into quicksand when I was out on a hike, or I was going to die in school of an earthquake. And why is that? Because it felt like every week we're under our desks, holding onto the legs and pulling chairs over our heads and running to doorways. Don't do drugs, right? Kidnapping was another one. I thought I was going to get stolen on every street corner.
Right.
Okay, so what are we pounding into these kids' heads every month-ish?
Lockdown.
What are we training them on? Lockdowns. Where do we go? How do we stack the chairs? Where do we
But
put
I
the
mean,
tables?
those happen almost daily.
But that's part of even like.
Listen, I'm not saying whether or not you
Oh,
should do it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying like,
I'm just speaking the reality if this is,
seeing it in the news makes it even more real for these kids, that it's like, okay, we do have problems.
Correct.
Because it might really happen at our school.
and earthquakes may
Part
happen.
of freshman orientation is what to use in your room to defend yourself. I mean,
Correct.
that was you, like, there was a video during COVID that you had to watch.
Okay, so my point here is that this is their number one stressor. This is what's on their mind. And it's perpetrated in our society. We're building it into their psyche. The difference between this and earthquakes is an unknown. We had things we worried about. School shootings, who's the school shooter?
One of their own.
They're looking around the classroom wondering, is it this kid next to me? Is it the kid across from me? Is it the teacher? That is not healthy for a psyche of developmental kid. So consequently, they don't trust a lot of people. Consequently, they fear a lot of people because they're taught to fear that anyone you piss off can come back and shoot you the next day. Anyone you look at the wrong way is a potential threat to you, your family. So we wonder why they're snowflakes. We wonder why they are very careful about saying the wrong thing.
Unless it's behind a screen and they have.
Well, if they're anonymous, then sure, but we're just talking just kind of the psyche that's built in, yeah.
I think also because now everything is so accessible.
Mhm.
Back when we were under our desks hiding, we couldn't just log on and hear about all the little earthquakes that happened around, or all the fires that they were dropping and rolling,
Yep.
burn out. They go on internet and they see every shooting that's happened everywhere, like right there.
And everybody's opinions.
And all the
and
opinions of it, and so it's like, not only, because you still kind of have that, oh, it won't happen at my school, but you see it happening everywhere, so it's real. And then it does happen at their school, and then they, yeah.
So you then add COVID into this, of don't touch people, stay 6 feet away. This is a socially awkward group, and you can't blame them. They're taught to fear everyone, and they're taught to not touch anyone, and they're taught to stay away from people. And we wonder why, well, my kid's not social, or these guys are so, yeah. More stressed about than adults about serious issues in the news. Money is their second biggest stressor behind school shootings. This is the most non-religious group, religiously affiliated generation we've ever seen. 1 1/3 is not religiously affiliated. That does not mean they're not spiritual. We're actually finding a rebound in spirituality where they're actually coming back over the millennials as far as spiritual. They're just having a hard time finding organized religion to be very fitting to their values, primarily because religions will not address their very diverse and social views of LGBTQIA, Black Lives Matter, standing up against gun rights, et cetera, which are huge for this generation. They feel churches should do more, and when churches don't do more, they view it as it's not an organization I can really get behind. So again, spiritually, not necessarily religiously. YouTube, they'll usually spend 3 or more hours per day on it. It is their preferred learning method. They log on regular basis. It's made me rethink how I teach in my home and in classes. It is very video based now because it is their preferred learning method. They expect to be lifelong learners, and here's why. They believe that their job will not be in existence in 10 to 20 years. That's the mindset they have. And so in order to have the job that I want in 10 to 20 years, I have to consistently improve my skills and knowledge. This is why higher ed is becoming less relevant to them, because sitting for 4 years and learning about theory is irrelevant to the practical skills that they need to thrive. They feel that by the time I get out, the skills I learned my first year will be obsolete in my first year programming. So they're preferring these short-term, recognizing they will be lifelong learners, that every year I expect to be trained and expect to have new education, et cetera, et cetera. They view it, whether it's YouTube, Google, doesn't matter. They're fine, but they're realizing they're gonna have to continuously explore those options. Only 13% of Gen Z feels ready for life after high school. This is facilitating what we're calling the gap years, where students are taking a gap year or two off and trying to figure out their life. Well, why is that? They must be lazy or they don't know the direction. No, it's viewed through a value relevance proposition. If you do not know what you want to major in, why in the world would you go start wasting money and time at a school? That's their view. So only 13% know what they want to do. The others, our generation was fine going to college to explore. I'll go take some general eds, kind of figure it out, I'll gravitate here and there. This generation, if they cannot understand, this is my path, this is what I want to do, they're not going to waste money and time. So we're seeing a huge rise.
I mean,
It's
I wish I
smart,
would've had that
right?
idea.
So it's a smarter way of how they're approaching life. They're not just doing things because parents are telling them to. 75% of them still feel immense pressure to go to college. 63% feel that there's other avenues to have successful careers besides college. So they're caught in this conflict. What's that?
So they feel the same way about high school.
Yeah, it's, again, value relevance proposition to them. We talked about that. Here's their learning styles. 80% love learning with friends. They love collaboration, small groups. In all of my classes, every question I ask, I shouldn't say every, the vast majority, I have them break up into 2 or 3 to solve the problem. They love that small group collaboration, because even our introverts or more shy people start learning how to speak up where they may not speak up in a class. 64% rank interactive classroom experiences as their #1 learning style, interactive classroom. 60% rank working through problems as most helpful. 51% rank by doing. This is a hands-on generation. They love hands-on. What doesn't work for them, 38% aren't huge fans of just sitting there seeing. They would rather see and then do. And then the last, which is how higher ed is structured, only 12% value listening, lecture formats. This is not the way this generation learns.
People that we are here to teach and work with.
So this is the way we learned, right? We could sit in classrooms all day long and be lectured to, and it's the way we got through it. Sometimes we mirror that. This generation, if this is the way we're teaching them, they're out the door. They tune out. They don't like this.
This is really interesting because a lot of my students and probably everybody else really struggle with that small group because it's hard to hear what's going on in the small groups when there's
Now,
other stuff going
you all
on.
have little nuances, right?
So
Yeah.
this is interesting.
Yeah, it's why I said, at the beginning that you gotta figure out what may be relevant, what may not be, because you're dealing with some added things to take into consideration.
I've heard this learning style is a product of their video gaming, because in your video game, you just try it, and if it doesn't work, you can try it again, and you try it again.
Correct.
Your guy just says, sir, you just try this, or I died, oh, I'll try this, I'll try this. They're just willing to try whatever until they find something that works.
Yep, it is.
Learn it from video gaming.
And more importantly, and we're gonna run out of time way quick.
Just keep running.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
I started diving into some additional research on males. And I've been told I say that wrong. So the opposite of female.
Male.
Males. It's like crowns. Males. Yeah, no, like gender males, not the male man. Gender males. So higher education is having a male epidemic, meaning males are not getting to the finish line at the same rate as previous generations. There have been some universities, Stony Brook and others, that have actually started creating male centers on their college campus to help with this epidemic. Now, they've taken a ton of heat. Can you imagine that? Creating a male support center on a college campus in this environment? They've been blasted, but they realize that even at SUU, our white males are some of the lowest retaining individuals. So one of the studies I was reading brought up a really interesting proposition regarding to gaming. So what this hypothesized and did some research on is they said that there's a part of the male brain that's slightly different than the female brain in that it has a little bit more dopamine hits on completion of things. That is why men will generally feel more satisfaction after they build a home, or complete a repair project, put on a new roof, build the doghouse, that dopamine hits a little more strong than with females, so men actually get more satisfaction of completing things, seeing things done from start to finish. So what they have found is gaming has hijacked that sensory. Because every level you complete, it triggers that. So consequently, the male population struggles seeing things through to the finish. Now all of a sudden you take a male and you say, hey, you've got 4 years minimum until you get your degree. And they're looking at it like, what? So we've been exploring ways to create badging systems. This is why you'll start hearing the buzz about badges. They're becoming very popular with this generation. These milestones that after each semester, you're walking away with certificates, badges. If you walk away right then and there, you have something to hold on to.
Participation trophies.
And that's us. We're the parents that created participation trophies for this generation. We have no one else to blame but ourselves. That's us. They didn't ask for it. We created it for them. So to that point, yeah, gaming has wrecked a lot of the things and has influenced a lot of this, including...
In that research study, did they compare people, because there's some men that don't game,
Correct.
right? And there are some, I guess, men that grew up in poor families that had Ataris rather than Nintendo.
That was mine.
That was our house. So, and then there's people that do game, and my brothers are very big completers. Like, they complete every task they start. But then my husband's family, 6 boys, they were raised very much on gaming. Like,
Sure.
They were allowed to game as much as they want whenever they wanted. And the completion rate is a lot lower when comparing
Correct.
the two lifestyles, right? But he will complete it, and he does get a high off of it, and you can tell, like, there's, but it's kind of this grudgingly, like, I gotta just keep pushing through. So in the research study, was there a difference? Did they take both types of people that grew up a certain way? Or did
I
they
don't know that they
just,
specifically looked at family upbringing. They more looked at just why, the basis of the
time of
study,
gaming or
you know, the
anything like
basic
that?
of the study was really why are men becoming more addicted to gaming than women?
okay,
What's the difference there? Because women are playing gaming at the same rate, generally speaking, as men. It may be on a phone, it may be Candy Crush or something like that, but gaming is gaming.
Yeah.
And why are men generally found to be more addicted to it? That was the basis of
okay. I was
this,
just curious, because I would like to see those numbers if there was a
Yeah,
study.
that would be fascinating to see in that
Yeah.
regard. 7 golden rules when you're teaching Generation Z. Number 1, give clear guidelines. Again, that transparency is very important to this generation. Make it make sense to them. Value relevance. Listen and adapt. Find a way to get feedback from them and adapt your approach. Tell stories. This generation loves those visual-minded, hands-on stories. Break with activities. To the extent you have to lecture, cool. Find ways to break and have them do an activity, a collaboration, solving problems. Number 6, teach less. Let them teach. Number 8, innovate. We've talked a lot about that. Savvy schools are finding more opportunities to engage in their studies, shifting from a lecture format to more of that hands-on approach. They expect technology to play a huge role in their education. And they expect schools to have the latest and greatest technology. Again, it's not like they're demanding it, it's just that's what they want. Now, if we don't have it, we've got to explain why, but it's their preference, it's what they want. Interactive hands-on learning experiences driven by technology is what they're craving. Some of their ed tech tools that they love are smart boards, do-it-yourself learning, online videos, game-based learning systems. Find ways to incorporate smartphones into lessons. Find ways to incorporate videos.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, obviously we work with a huge variety of students. Are we going to see these trends? Do you think it'll continue on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Here's some Gen Z-friendly classroom tips, cross-disciplinary alignments, student-informed learning, experiential learning, integrated technology, and visual aids. And we've kind of talked about.
Can you go back to your 7 golden rules?
Yeah.
Are you gonna share this presentation?
Yeah,
sure
can.
That would be
Yes,
awesome.
please.
Well, that was a long
You're not
time.
leaving.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, they won't let you out. Yeah, you didn't share with me, so I was like, maybe it's proprietary and we can't borrow it, but
No,
if
it's
you'll let
all
us.
honesty, I was still tweaking it last night after
Okay.
I did that one with those employers, and I was just kind of fired up last night, and I'm like,
Thank you. No, this is like really informative.
Yeah, it is.
all right, hey, we are at time. I want to be respectful. I've got more stuff to share. We can wrap it up now. I want to keep y'all on schedule. What?
This is really valuable. I'm gonna be able to get along with my 12-year-olds for at least the next 5 years,
You
so.
better keep going. You better keep
We're happy
going.
to
Aaron.
have you work through lunch if you're happy to keep presenting.
I'm happy to.
Let's
Okay.
keep going.
Can we just work through lunch, Roberta said? Have our lunch and continue?
Yeah, I don't even think lunch is
Lunch
here
isn't
yet.
even here. You see, you're really good.
Hey, cool.
You're good.
So I'm hoping we can wrap this up in 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good.
So with regards to teachers and professors, students have a great way of sniffing out inauthenticity among teachers. And it doesn't take long for them to see who really cares about them or who's just doing it for a job or only cares about the subject matter. Here's something I found with authenticity with Generation Z. It probably, and this is just anecdotal, there's no research behind this, but what I found is it usually takes 4 to 6 positive, authentic encounters with Generation Z before they start finding you to be authentic. The first time you treat them nice, it's because it's your job. Second time you do something nice for them, it's still your job. Third time, okay, maybe the person is actually a nice person, but it's still their job. Then the fourth time, well, wait a minute, this person's actually sticking with this. They may be authentically nice. Fifth, sixth, seventh, they do it. So a lot of times people will be like, I tried. I went and sat down with them and tried talking to them, and they wouldn't even look at me. Cool, that's attempt number 1. You got to get up to kind of that 6 with this generation because they are looking to make sure you are sincere in the way you're approaching. Don't be surprised if they're cold shouldering you the first few times. That's them. They don't trust people.
And don't take it personally.
And don't take it personally. It's their psyche. We stand 6 feet away and everyone's a shooter.
They're trusting that your sincerity,
That's exactly right.
testing it.
All right, here's Gen Alpha. This will be my one slide on Gen Alpha, and I know you can't see it. That's fine. Here's what we're looking at. Workforce for 2030. By 2030, so just in 7 more years, 34% of the workforce will be Gen Z. Okay, it will be the largest makeup of the workforce by generation will be Gen Z. Gen Alphas will make up 11% of the workforce by then. So we're getting there quick. Here's some interesting things about Gen Alpha. These are the suspected jobs, top jobs for Gen Alpha. So you wonder why they're saying, I need to go get more skills and thinking this way. Cybersecurity specialist, UX manager, drone pilot, blockchain developer, data designer, virtual reality engineer, robotics mechanic, sleep technician, sustainability officer, driverless train operator, well-being manager, AI specialist, life simplifier, urban farmer, and space tourism agent are the expected careers for this generation.
What?
I want a copy of that.
Now what are we teaching?
Well, big time cybersecurity and user experience, UX right now, is that's such
It's-
a new major.
Yeah.
Like, it's been really.
It's
under
blown
something else.
up at SUU.
Yeah.
We've turned our cybersecurity into a master's program now.
The user experience.
UX, so how you
UX, that's what
interface
UX
with the
is.
product,
Yep.
how you interface with a website, how your chatbot, all those things. Because my husband, in that, he works for eBay, that's like all he works on. And our son doing the same, because it's relevant, it's worth the money.
Yeah. So bottom line, this is why they're thinking, they go to school, they go to elementary school, they go to high school, they go to college, and they're like, why am I learning about Plato and Socrates? It's that value relevance.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we have a prediction on how many of those kids or this generation is gonna actually be a business owner and entrepreneur? Have we made a prediction on it?
No, because we're still grappling with as quickly as things are changing in technology and society, we still don't understand what the true needs are. And what climate will do and what regulations will kick in, or we can continue to build these batteries that we all need to run, you know what I mean? So many things. All right, this I find fascinating. This is what we call the gap. Every year, they association called National Association of Careers and Employers, known as NACE. They pump out a survey that goes to employers, and they say, hey, we have found that these 8 skills are what every graduate needs to survive in the world. Okay, so everyone to be successful in this world needs to have professionalism and work ethic. They need to have oral and written communication skills. They need to have leadership skills, critical thinking, problem solving, career management, global intercultural fluency, teamwork, collaboration, and digital technology. Those are the 8 base of where every graduate should have. So they send this out to, nationally to employers saying, please rate the recent graduates from college on how proficient they are in these 8 areas. Okay, y'all with me? Okay, so the employers then send back their stuff, and they said, look, professional work ethic, only 42% of the graduates are proficient in professionalism and work ethic. Only 33% in leadership. Only 17% in career management, a high one on team collaboration. They send that same survey to the recent graduates as well and ask them to rate themselves and how proficient they are. So the students come back, I'm 89.4% proficient in professionalism work ethic, where employers are saying you're 42.5%. So you start seeing that gap over there of a 46% difference between what employers are expecting and what's being delivered. This is why employers are becoming very critical of this school systems, of you're not producing what we need. Now listen, this generational gap has always existed. My grandpa thought my generation was the most useless generation in the world, right? These gaps always exist, but we're seeing these big gaps, and so we're trying to find ways to help bridge these gaps and help make our students a little bit more proficient. But nothing else, just be aware, those are the 8 things that are tested on, not tested, but that employers are looking for in their people. And I think those are universally applied whether you want to be an entrepreneur or not. I mean, that's
Maybe
just...
they need to ask the students, what are your top 8 things that you think are important? Like maybe
video gaming,
value and relevance.
I think so many of them are also going into employment. Well, I already worked here 6 months. I should have a raise.
Oh, yeah.
I should have a job promotion. I mean,
Oh,
we have a
100%.
huge neighbor, and I think they're not understanding the continuation of work and grit that's required to move up.
So I'm going to push you back on that.
Okay.
It's not that they don't understand, it's employers aren't taking the time to explain it to them. And here's what I mean by this. LinkedIn study was conducted among all employers and found that only 10% of employers have a clear set out policy of how to climb the rungs in your organization.
True.
Okay? So what this generation wants, they're happy to work for you if you have a detailed plan of, hey, when you come in, here's what you're going to work on for your first year. And at the end of your first year, we're going to evaluate you, and here's a promotion, a job title, a pay raise. Then over your second year, here's what we need you to develop and work on, and et cetera. So these students, it's not that they're demanding it, it's they don't understand because they're like, look, I've been here a year. They think that's how we all advanced.
Games tell them how to level up.
Yeah, so what I've been coaching employers on is you've got to create a system. How do you climb the ladder? Again, transparency, value, relevance of, look, we want you here long term. Here's where I'm seeing you in 1 year, here's where I'm seeing you in 5 years, here's where I want you to be in 10 years. And here's every step on how to get there. Here's when the it's exactly why they do.
There's no, to me.
54% left a year within the first year because there was no clear growth plan.
They switch phone user plans and jobs the same rate.
They don't want to bounce around. This is the interesting thing with this generation. But if they're starting with an organization or work and there is no clear path for growth, they will leave you. Because finances, security, job, value, relevance are top. If they do not see a clear way to avoid the recession or the everything that they went through, they're not going to stick around at your organization. They're bailing on you.
Okay.
Yep.
I just was wondering, like, they move, like.
They will. And I'll guarantee, if I'm a betting man, I live close enough to Vegas, that 90% of the time when they're bouncing, it's because that organization does not, they think they may have. There's no clear guidelines on how do you advance in our organization and exactly when you need to do it, when are the feedback interviews, not yearly, talking monthly feedback with this generation.
And if this headhunter says you can move this way.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you?
And especially if that's has a growth pattern or a way for them to do it. Absolutely, they're going to jump to that.
I'm just wondering if you've looked at numbers on this one, because one of my greatest list to look at is the businesses that came out of the Great Depression. There's
Uh-huh.
so many of our like massive families in America and around the world came out of the Great Depression.
Sure.
Because they found what was going to work and then they moved on with that. They became the entrepreneurs back then. They went through World War I, they had World War II. So I'm wondering if like you looked at like any correlation between the two and how many of them, yeah, the baby boomers, like, you know, you find a good job, you work there forever and then you retire with your pensions.
Yeah.
How many, like, is that number the same compared to how many now are looking at it? Like, I don't want to be the person working for somebody. I'm going to be that business owner and get everybody else working with me.
So I don't know the number specific, but I know exactly what you're saying. And here's one of the things that's starting to show up with Gen Z is they're finding that Generation Z is more like their grandparents than like their parents.
Huh.
And this is a big trend with this gen. They realize all the things their parents did wrong. And they're finding value in those boomers who learned skills, who learned traits, and were able to get through bad times. And so this is one of the things, this comparison of they're more like grandparents than they are like millennials.
That makes sense, the ones I know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, here's some interesting trends that we're seeing. A lot of large tech firms have removed four-year degree requirements. No longer required. And a lot of organizations are starting to offer their own university systems inside the business. Meaning you come work with us, in 2 months we'll get you trained and you'll start working. And then in your second year, we're going to offer you another month of training, and you'll keep working. And then in your third year, another month of training, and you'll keep working. That is what this generation loves, and they're thriving. Who's leading the way on this one? Google. Google U is huge, and they are tapping into that entrepreneurial educational shift that this generation is demanding. They're shifting over to the STEM areas. Why? You should all know the answer to this by now.
Value and relevance.
Value and relevance. They are seeing sustainability, stability in STEM. We're seeing a huge drop in the humanities, the social sciences, because again, I don't really see what I'm a political science major, so I can poke fun at humanities and social science, but I don't see what history has to do with me getting to where I want to go. Again, value relevance. So huge upticks in STEM. Yeah, there's that quote on their grandparents. Gen Z seems to be more common with their grandparents who are focused on technical skills that allow them a stable career in trades, is what the research is finding.
Isn't it also their creativity too, though, with STEM? Like,
Yeah,
they have, like,
the
'cause my son
creativity,
will
the hands-on.
build Legos that are gun. He's built.
Like, how are you
machine guns,
hands-on
he's
with
done, like-
philosophy?
Yeah, it's not.
You build a stack. I don't know what you do hands-on philosophy. But yeah, hands-on, that creativity, that ability to experiment, fail, try again. Here's industries that they're really gravitating toward: technology, number one, healthcare, real estate, banking and finance, education. When you break it down by gender, the males, technology, healthcare, real estate, banking, finance, manufacturing. For females, healthcare, technology, education, real estate, retail is what this generation's kind of driving.
Teachers.
So you see that technology and healthcare is huge, especially among the males. More than half are going to technology. What are they looking for in jobs, salary? So the lighter gray is pre-COVID, dark blue is after COVID. What was the big shift? Salaries boomed because again, they saw moms and dads without jobs. And they saw what it meant on them, that it's another night of eating potatoes. And it's another night of stress and no fun and things like that. COVID made salary very important for this generation. Scheduling flexibility bumped up, but that was kind of already high to begin with. Benefits also bumped up post-COVID. Workplace culture went down a little bit. We're starting to see a rise back in that. Convenience, perks, and personal growth round out the top 7 for this generation. All right, we are at the final couple slides. Why am I optimistic about this generation? They're probably the most ambitious generation we've ever seen. And we can find out a way to harness that. You're gonna really tap in. They're the most self-learning and self-directed generation we've ever seen. Give them some freedom to self-learn and explore and fail. They're so future-oriented, it's awesome. You can have big conversations with them and tackle some big complex issues because they are consistently looking to the future. They're very creative. They're very compassionate and conscientious of what's happening around them and in the world. They're very open-minded. They're very financially savvy. They've got the biggest hearts probably of any generation. The way they can move and integrate with technology. If I've got phone issues, I give it to my Gen Zers and they have it solved. They'll watch a YouTube video first, but they'll have it solved within 3 minutes. They're realists, they're pragmatic, they're innovative, and that entrepreneurial spirit is just awesome. All right, that's my info, that's my cell phone. That's it.
Wow.
As I'm packing up, any final questions, thoughts, comments?
Do they really all have ADHD or? I mean, I'm not mocking, I'm just saying, it feels like, and they say it too, I have ADHD, I say that, but, you know, I don't know if I get it.
So, yeah, so one of the big debates right now that's happening is, are they truly all anxious and depressed and have mental issues, or is it just we have finally built a culture savvy enough to put labels with things and be okay to admit that things aren't right? Some argue that this is just a sissy generation and they're weak and everything like that. Others are saying, kudos, we have finally accepted that mental health is an issue we have to tackle, and it's not just suck it up, buttercup, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. So the same as with ADHD. Their attention span is definitely going down, but it's not that much different than millennials. I think one of the things we have found at the university is we find a significant amount of students label things because they don't know how to label things. So we have a counseling and psychological service program where people will go for mental health. It's a 10-week waiting period. Okay, so one of the things we started looking into, we started talking with the counselors, we're like, how many people are actually going because they're depressed? It's like severe depression, things like that, there's very few. But everyone's coming in saying, I'm depressed. So we've got students and we've got counseling. What we realized is we need a middle stopping ground, so we created a wellness office. That's your middle ground. So now what happens is students will come in, generally to their peer mentor or to a parent, and say, I think I'm depressed. Cool, let's go walk down to the wellness center. They'll go and they'll pick up a sheet, and they'll say, hey, let's kind of read through some of these symptoms. Did that sound like you? Yeah. Do you know what that is? What? It's called stress. Welcome to college. This is normal? Yep, what you're feeling is 100% normal. Well, how do I get rid of it? Yeah. How are you doing exercising? I'm not. When's the last time you had anything but ramen noodle? Oh, since 3 months ago when I was last at home. How are you doing with sleep? I haven't slept in days. Okay, cool. So the sheet provides coping mechanisms, and we have that. So what we've seen is that the need for CAPS has dramatically declined because, one, we've put labels on what it actually is. Second, we've actually equipped them with coping mechanisms to deal with what we're now labeling. That way we're saving CAPS for those who are truly depressed, who truly are anxious, who are truly having those hard times, and instead helping other students realize that they're normal. Why do we have to do that? Again, I'm pointing the finger primarily at parents.
The question is, because we all went through college and had these same stressors and didn't walk to the wellness office, so what is the difference?
Correct, because you had parents who you would come home and be like, I'm not feeling good. I don't care, get the dishes done. And they kick you in the bum. We've now raised the generation where it's like, oh, honey, I'm sorry you're not feeling good. Why don't you just go down and take a nap? And when you feel ready, we've created the participation trophies as a prime example where everyone wins. And I'm not trying to diminish the severity that it does exist, but we also are raising them with parents who haven't pushed them like we were pushed. I don't care if it's raining. Get out there and shovel the dirt. The rain's not going to melt you. You're not made of sugar, right? That was my dad's favorite line.
But to that point, though, we have, I'll just be honest, I had a mental breakdown at 36. I pushed through it, you pushed through it.
Sure. But
what's the point? You don't want your kids to end up that way.
Correct. So I'm not trying to diminish the reality of what's there. What I am saying is we've raised them differently. I think in some regards better because we're talking about it. Especially for men in my generation to admit that we had health problems. Oh my gosh, that was, you're the albatross. That's not good to admit that you're somehow weak, right? But it's cool that in this generation, we can actually have those conversations and be like, I'm sorry you're having a rough time. Can we talk about what severity is it? We now have a ranking system at SUU. Yellow, orange, red. And based on where that student is at, we get them to the right resources. It's freed up caps for those who are real, but it's paying attention to those who are expressing, and we're validating. No one gets turned away. No one should get turned away. But does every single person need to be in the counselor every single time? What we're finding is no. But they don't know that because no one's taken the time to educate them and provide coping mechanisms for what they're experiencing, which we often call life. Again, not to diminish the severity of people who actually struggle. I've got family members, friends who struggle with this stuff and they need that help, but I'm excited because we've actually freed up room for them to get the help that they need when they need it, instead of, oh, just sleep it off, right? So.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Eric. We'll award our keynotes with a gift.
Hey, thank you. This is awesome.
We appreciate your wisdom and coming and giving us that perspective on Gen Z.
I hope it was helpful. Thanks for your
Yes.
participation.
Always the hardest of most to be. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, y'all.